Hey guys, this is episode 21 of the Football Truth podcast. I am happy and privileged to have my good friend on Sebastian Coello. He actually visited me almost over a year now back in Beirut when I was there last summer, and then I saw him for quite a bit of the summer in Spain. And he has a great background in football, in sports science, and biomechanical training. So I'm really happy to have you on, Seb. Welcome.
Good to be here, man. It's good to see you as well. Recently, as well in Spain.
Yeah. It was fantastic training on the beach, on the coast of of southern Spain with all the local attractions.
Yeah, man. It's you can't get better than having been able to set up like a workspace or a gym space like right
Hmm.
on the water in the sun, access to fresh juice, whatever you need right around the
Hmm.
corner. It's absolutely elite for health.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to going back there next spring or next summer. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
But so first of all, I think some of the viewers will say, okay, his accent is Australian, but he looks Spanish, but maybe not all the way Spanish. Why don't you give some of the guys like a background on where you're from and 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 how you got into football and the training?
Yeah, so I'm actually from England, Iceland as well. As you can tell
Yeah,
by
yeah.
no. So I grew up in Australia from father who was Spanish, mother who was Argentinian, who is Argentinian, and I spent a
Hmm.
lot of time actually going there when I was a kid, especially to Argentina. Like every no family in Australia, so you go visit all the family during the school holidays here. For example, they were in December, January, around there. So I learned a lot of Spanish along the way, and my accent is towards the Argentinian side. But then I go to
Mm.
Spain, and they're like, it kind of slowly morphs into this Spanish mixture. Look a bit. It's like a confused Spaniard sometimes when I speak from the accent. But
Mm.
no, man, I grew up in Sydney. I was in the world of football super early on. Playing in a local club from the age of 4, then kind of rode that local club until 12, 13 years old. And then from there, started to see the difference in, pros, kids who are playing a little bit more high level, more athletic than in general.
Mm.
And then that's when I went into reps football. So, like semi-pro level, but at a youth age in Australia. And I was playing football, until the age of around 18. And I had in that space period of time a lot of different injuries and different things that came up along the way, that when you're young you just recover from them quite quickly if you're reasonably
Mm.
healthy and you have a good diet. But you don't if that was my son, for example, and I saw like the way he was getting those injuries and how it was happening, I've had I could recognize those symptoms of certain things that were happening in the body a little bit earlier, but no one around me
Mm.
kind of knew what was going on there. So
Of
that's
course.
when around 18, I was playing in that semi-pro level, and then I was getting to the point where I was really interested in actually going beyond Australia, but not because the Australian level was just rubbish or anything, but just to kind of just explore what football was like overseas. You watch it growing up playing football. You growing up, watching TV, England, Spain, all around the world, football from around there. So you get a bit curious as well, and obviously the level is a lot greater in Spain or England. So you go, okay, naturally,
Mhm.
how can I explore these options? So then around 19 years old, I had, well, 18 actually, I headed off to London where I was basically living for about 8, 9 months, training, with a few local clubs there and just kind of like staying fit while I was looking for different opportunities to kind of play football. And but before I missed an important part there. Before I actually went overseas to play football, I
Mhm.
had a huge for me at least, injury that set me off about a year and a half. That was when I was 16. I got a double tibia and fibula fracture. I got basically tackled from behind onto my planted leg, and like a tree branch, my leg just ended up snapping. And,
Mhm.
I had from halfway down my shin, completely folded my leg, and bone came out of the skin, the whole thing. It it was a pretty full on injury that took about 2 years to really get to the point where I was able to run again.
Hmm.
But as with everything, of course, there was a healing plan and a recovery plan, but it doesn't mean things healed and recovered how they should have. And I'm sure I've spoken to you obviously about this and with your own injuries
Hmm.
in the past and how you had a rehab plan or whatever it is, but it doesn't end up healing as it should, right? You talked
Hmm.
about a little bit of that, right, with the whole physio stuff as well.
Yeah, I had two foot fractures and then the
Yep,
ACL tear as well, and then also with the meniscus.
yep,
And oftentimes, basically, I would say in mainstream physical therapy, the goal is just to get them pain free,
yep,
as as that's like the finish line. But like you can get pain free by covering up the symptoms, which is the pain is a symptom of an underlying issue, right? And if you
yep.
numb the pain, you like basically kind of like it's like in a car. If if the engine light is on and like you just cover it up, that doesn't fix the engine, right?
Mm,
So
absolutely.
that's what I saw in myself a lot, and I saw with so many other footballers across my travels, and that was one of the big reasons why I made football entangled.
Yep, yep. That makes total sense, and yeah, that's a good analogy actually with the
Mhm.
engine lights. I think like a lot of people, obviously that's very ingrained from when you were younger. Like
Of
symptom
course,
comes
yeah,
up, you just treat the symptom as quick as possible. There is no root cause. It's all random. All these things are happening randomly.
yeah.
You just wrong place, wrong time. Of course, there's always an underlying. Of course, apart from some freak injuries that do occur, but those are extremely rare compared to the amount of
Mhm.
actual injuries that are happening from the root cause of whether it's movement or diet or
Mhm.
lifestyle in general. But yeah, man. So like, I ended up, I had this injury, and then I was completely out for like 2 years, and I just remember being drugged up. I remember being like completely full on self identity shock, where I was like, "What am I now? I can't play football. I don't
Mhm.
identify with just putting my head down and doing well at school either, because I'm too active as an individual. As an individual, my DNA was like, "What are you doing inside under the blue lights, just watching movies and being all depressed?" And then I realized that quickly early on that you know I've got to do this. I've got to go down the understanding like exactly what's going on with the recovery process, because I was like, this is taking too long. And a friend of mine actually at the time was like, man, you're sitting inside, right? You're sitting inside, you're
Mhm.
watching movies, and you're just kind of like waiting for your leg to get better, right? Like, you need to be
Mhm.
getting vitamin D for your strong bones. I was like, oh, vitamin D, what's that? Like, what do you mean strong bones? Like, I thought I just
Yeah.
had, bones and there was nothing else to it. Eat protein and that's it.
Mhm.
Get outside, get your vitamin D going. You need to start, getting through. You need to actually get your body healing a lot quicker than, where as it is right now, because you're clearly not in a your lifestyle is not conducive to recovery or health at the moment, right? A lot of resistance to that initially, where I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. But then after a while, I actually started to understand, like, getting in the sun, how much better my mental health started to become. Just actually having a normal circadian rhythm rather than staying up super late and thinking that I was just going to recover via just like staying still. Pretty much that's it, right?
Mhm.
And Anyway, so look, along the way, essentially, where this leads to is, after healing and getting back into walking, getting back into running, I quickly realized that the way I had healed and the way that my fascia and muscles had healed was completely twisted. Right? I didn't realize it at the time, but the way your body, if you kind of think about it like, you're creating a sidewalk, right, with pavement, and you've got cement that you're laying down, right?
Mhm.
Someone right in the final stages of the drying of the cement starts to put a footprint in it, and then it kind of basically heals with that footprint, right? Well, there were certain stages along the way of my healing process that were
Mhm.
crucial to actually the longevity of my movement in the future. And I didn't understand this at the time, but I did a lot of this lifestyle stuff a little bit too late, right? And rather
Yeah.
than actually starting immediately, started to do a little bit of the rehab too late. And there was a lot of things along the way that obviously we can get into in terms of the biomechanics, movement stuff that I understood later on. But yeah, that was kind of like my kind of like injury process and introduction
Mhm.
into the whole understanding, like, what movement is, from discovering how my body had actually not just experienced that injury, but the consequences of that injury into future movement and future athleticism, future performance, everything along there. Yeah.
Yeah, scar tissue and all
Yeah.
the even what some would call motor system or motor sensory amnesia,
Mm,
kind of like unconscious patterns of movement that your body created to adapt to that trauma
right.
that normal rehab is not gonna even like acknowledge, basically.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Actually, that's good that yeah, it's good that you mentioned that. Actually, that's definitely something that a lot of people don't. Obviously, they don't know what you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Yeah, of
as
course.
soon as you bring it up to someone's awareness, they go, "Oh, I didn't realize I did that." It's like, have you noticed that every time you load your right foot, for example, like when you're running, your head just tilts the opposite way, for example? It's just like
Yeah, exactly.
everything you're doing is basically to avoid loading this leg. So they just end up shifting, but unconsciously shifting, and they go, "Why is my foot like this?" And it's like, look at how the rest of your body has adapted to just you doing this exact movement, And then you show
Yeah,
them
yeah.
a video of someone doing it completely normally, and they go, "Oh, okay, I can see where I'm way off." So there's like visual examples, and then there's the kinesthetic awareness, the feeling of what's going on as well. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I think that brings up like a really good point that I wish I did more when I was kind of like in high school and I was playing football, is just watch myself more often.
Mm,
Like watch video, watch like replays, watch highlights or of myself, I mean,
yep,
to actually just look how my body's moving in space and time in that third person perspective.
yep,
And that self-analysis, I think, is where a lot of the value in terms of even just like normal football performance and like tactics and all that stuff. But on top of that, looking, okay, why is my shoulder always hunched over like when I run,
right.
and like why do my arms like look like little like little arms, like what's his name, Raheem Sterling, you know,
Yeah,
like T-Rex arms.
yeah. T-Rex arms.
And just that self analysis, I
Mm.
think, is really important.
Yeah, it's so powerful because look, a lot of people, they don't do it for one reason. A lot of the time it's vanity, right? They, as soon
Of
as they
course,
see a video of themselves, rather than objectively going, okay, what's going on here? Let me just assume that it's not me, and I was just looking at someone else move. Like, how does this look? Rather than just going, oh my god, like my hair is like this, and oh shit, I'm like super overweight, or I'm super underweight, or whatever it is. Rather
Mhm.
than looking at it like that, having the lens of wanting to become better and like seeking mastery, for example, in movement comes down to actually being able to step back and go, okay, what's going on here? Like objectively, from my
Mhm.
understanding, what am I seeing? Okay, I've been told that bad posture is this, and I've been told that good posture is this. What is this kind of like looking more like? Okay, this is more looking like bad posture. Okay, oh, this is more looking like good posture. But what about this? And then you can kind of test different movements, and then all of a sudden you've got a library of someone moving. It doesn't have to be, just you. It could be you looking at other people. Like, I mean, I'm sure anyone who's watching this at some stage has watched athletic movement. I mean, watching football,
I
watching
hope.
sports. Yeah, I hope so too. Very important for your development, I think, to watch as well, especially with
Mhm.
access to YouTube. I mean, imagine like our ancestors having a film study. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, being able to objectively look at yourself and being able to use that as a guide is so powerful, so powerful.
What would you say is a big mistake that you see lots of young footballers making?
I think that the biggest mistake that I see most young footballers doing is, this came straight to me like as the biggest
Mhm.
thing, but I'm sure there's other things that are actually more important. But over kitting, right? So over buying shoes, over buying kit, and using that as a means of like somehow progressing rather than being able to work with less, as an example. And I use that in the
Mhm.
context of people training. And, especially now that I've
Mhm.
played like in Europe and seen people and seen the youth in Europe versus in Australia, there's
Mhm.
definitely on both sides while there, the consumerism of like these kids and not understanding like what's more important when it comes to actually like, what is football and what is movement at the end of the day. But that was just like the first thing that came to me. But in terms of like, I would say from an athleticism movement standpoint, um, definitely the overemphasis of trying to get big and strong in the gym. That's like number one. Massive
Mhm.
emphasis on that, especially from a young age. The second thing is being like not, I guess, not being aware enough of how their environment is affecting their performance. I think is
Mhm.
a huge thing.
Mhm.
When you look at some of the best players in the world, and when you look at their upbringings, they unintentionally were placed in a very good environments. A lot of them, right? You may think that some poor kid in whatever country. Let's just use Ronaldo. Let's just use Neymar for example, right? Being born in like
Mhm.
Ronaldo wasn't super wealthy, lived in Madeira, wasn't like slums or anything, but it wasn't, it was just very, humble beginnings, like lower middle class. And
Mhm.
same with Neymar, like being born in that environment. They unintentionally were outside most of the time, good sun, very social life where they were meeting a lot of people and getting exposed to different players from a young age, running around with different levels of professionalism, obviously between, I'm sure there were older kids who were playing with younger kids, everything in between. A lot of the food that they have, they didn't have access to super processed foods. I mean, I know a lot of
Exactly, yeah.
poorer areas sometimes do now, but even just like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you were eating what your mum made for you, which was usually locally sourced food anyway, because you couldn't even afford McDonald's or anything like that as well either, or,
Yeah, yeah.
something like that. But I think those would be the two main things for sure. Yep.
Yeah, spot on. I think so many footballers don't like, well, on your last point, so many footballers don't want to just do the basics of bet on time,
Yep.
be outside in the sun, grounding.
Yep.
Just like three basics
Yep.
that they won't do until they get injured, or they wait until the pain is so much that they
Yep.
have to act.
Yep. Yep. I mean, think about it like this. How easy is it to go to bed on time and eat properly when you're genuinely training, you know, and you're
Mhm.
outside and you're sweating and you're, getting like all kinds of movement, whether it's like you playing different sports and you also playing football and then playing after school 4 or 5 hours of football and then, doing your homework or whatever. I mean, you're going to bed like for sure on time if you're doing all that
Yeah,
a lot of the time,
yeah.
but
You're
a lot of
exhausted going
people,
to bed,
yeah, exactly. But, when you're when you're forced, I guess, to, when you're forced into particular environments, I can sympathize with that a little bit. Where I'm like, okay, I get it. You've got to be at school, and you don't have a lot of time to do this, and you've got to, finish this. But at the end of the day, like you've got to question more: is it you that is not wanting to go to bed on time, or is it, for example, the chronic consumption of poor foods and like preservatives and a lot of these foods that are kind of altering the way your like hormones are kind of being expressed and everything else.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it without going
Mhm.
too deep into the details of it that could be impacting someone's ability to actually like regulate their own circadian rhythm, for example, even in the morning.
Mhm. Yeah, well, just to think and make rational decisions that are good for them,
Yep.
that ability is altered
Mm.
from the foods, from
Yep.
porn,
Yep.
from the blue light from phones and the video games
Yep.
affect your dopamine and actually make it harder for you to make better decisions.
Yep. No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think as well, when we talk about elite footballers, right, and especially young
Mhm.
kids, you can definitely tell from a young age when someone has potential, but not just physically, but also mentally. They're more open
Mhm.
to receiving advice or criticism from people who are like older than them, and even the ones that aren't. A lot of the time, they'll test out certain things that they've heard before, as an
Mhm.
example, right? Like I remember when I was a young kid and I absolute freak football that I used to know. Actually, an African American guy from Boston, really athletic guy, and he was. When you look at his lifestyle, he just didn't have the understanding of what was going on in his environment that was actually affecting his sleep and other things that were kind of affecting his performance. But
Mhm.
you could see very quickly when he made one change, he was very in tune with how that change actually affected him. So, for example, he would start eating a little bit more protein, less processed food. He was like really aware of how that change, what changes were occurring, and would recognize the impact of that and try and keep that going, as an example, right? Whereas like a lot of kids, for example, and a lot of people, it's all by random and all by choice. They rock up to a game one day and they're feeling absolutely exhausted. Their legs do not work. They can't seem to get going until the second half, where everything is going. It's like, of course, you haven't had 2 liters of water, you haven't had any water. You're completely sleep deprived. As an example, the nutrition leading up to that day was extremely poor. Like a lot of these things are compounding, right? But I think the guys and the athletes who were able to understand themselves earlier on and make those adjustments that they need and maintain the level, maintain that consistency where they do feel good and they do feel prepared in general for sport or whatever it is. Those are the guys that when that random scout is at the game or when there's an important game, they know exactly how to feel, how to sleep, for that event, and not make it by chance that they're making it, as an example.
I think you bring up a good point about so many, like one of the most common questions that I get online is, what's a good pregame routine? And it's like, it's basically they are waiting until the last second. So in this context, that would be the day of the game.
Gotcha. Yep.
To do something about their health or their recovery or their performance. And it's this, they want some secret like routine.
Yep.
After, and I want to hear your answer to this question. But usually I tell them like, well, every day of your life was a pregame for this game. And you can't just cheat that by a few supplements and some weird like breath work. So you need to actually change you. And then you can walk up to the game, just totally relax and just play and don't worry about some like mechanical robotic routine that you spent 3 weeks creating on your notes on your phone,
Yeah, exactly right.
So what do you think?
What's considered a more disciplined sport? Let's just use fighting, for example, right? Let's use fighting, for example, UFC. Everyone thinks that a lot of the time the fight camp is where they're making all their gains, for example, and where they're getting ready for the fight. The fight camp, they're getting fit. They're not getting necessarily better. They're not becoming better fighters. They may be studying a particular technique. They may be getting cardiovascular fit for this event. And we're talking already 8, 10, 12 weeks out from the actual fight, right? But they're not learning how to fight during that time.
Of course.
Yeah. So the ability for them to be able to rock up on fight night and fight comes from trusting the training and trusting the prior work that they've done. They're not waiting on the day of the fight to go, okay, how am I going to knock out this guy? What's going on? By that stage, they should just be smiling, listening to music, chilling out with family, going to the fight, doing what they need to do that fight. They've trusted that they've gone through the process and what they need to do to feel confident and, ready to go on the day, and when you look at any professional football, when is a lot of the work done? Pre-season. Great. The rest of the season is all about maintaining that level of fitness, right? And trusting that you've done the work in order to every weekend go to the game. And you're not depending on some kind of like new supplement or some kind of like random diet that you're just going to hop on, as you just said, on the day of and just expect to become a freak what's his name, Kante, for example, and just be able to run all game. That's not how it's going to work.
Yeah. I mean, imagine walking up to a master swordsman.
Yeah.
And you ask him, like, how can I become like you? Or how should I get ready for, I guess for a war or for a match or a fight, whatever.
Tomorrow I'm going to war.
Yeah, tomorrow. And then he's like, well, you can do what I did for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
because the master swordsman doesn't have a pregame routine. I guarantee you.
No.
I guarantee you when the war bells are ringing, he does not sit down, do his 5-minute meditation and take his ashwagandha drink
Yep.
and his sea moss.
Yep.
He's ready.
Yep.
It's what he's born to do.
Yep. Yeah. He would probably just be like, "You're fighting tomorrow. Okay, get a gun." That's what he would tell you.
No,
Yeah.
hire someone else.
Yeah. Hire someone else. Exactly. You're better spent the next couple hours finding a network for you to sort this out, as opposed to doing it yourself.
Get some help, mate.
Yeah. Well, look. If there is, and I'm sure there will be, a young, like, aspiring footballer watching, this and going, okay, like, what are they actually saying here? Imagine for a second that in 2 months from now, that you've got a professional trial with a professional club, as an example, right? I guarantee you right now, you would start making steps, in order to actually prepare for that, even mentally making steps, like understanding and talking with your family, like, about, hey, look, I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to eat earlier, for example, for me to go to bed earlier. I need to be able to have time outside to play. I need to be able to have all these opportunities. Once that environment has set up for performance, like that, what I just said there, once everyone is on the same page, with how you want to perform and what is the discipline that you need for these things, it's done. There is no more discipline. There is no more consistency, because it's just part of your lifestyle. Like you eating, for example, a healthy diet, right? That is low in anything relatively processed and good for the gut and optimal for digestion. It's not like you have to wake up every day and convince yourself to eat these things. It's just part of your natural kind of like decision making, right? And making and building on these habits once they do feel good, and once you do feel the performance. It's not like a lot of these professional footballers that do these things, they're not doing it out of willpower. They're doing it because they genuinely, it's genuinely part of them. Going outside in the sun is genuinely part of me. I understand the benefits and I feel the benefits, and it's ingrained in me how good I've felt with it, and the benefits and the experience and the competence I've received from having, imagine 20 days unbroken, seeing the sun, seeing the sunrise. I know when in the morning I'm going to feel most prepared to do work, most prepared to go, outside, work out, all these things. It just comes naturally, and I think if you don't have that at the moment, you need to seriously see and consider, like, what part of your lifestyle or what part of your training can you have some kind of control over, and start to, make those changes, in general.
I think that also answers one of the other most common questions I get is, how
Yep.
do I improve my confidence?
Yep.
And my answer is, you become someone who's naturally confident.
Yep. Pretty much. That's a good, yeah, it's just straight up. It's like, yeah, I mean,
It's like, well, I mean, I can tell you to go do 1,000 affirmations in the mirror and
yeah,
do all these things, but, like, frankly, the physical is always, for me, is where things start, and
yep,
you can't skip that and go right to mental training or go right to some kind of spiritual work.
yep,
It's like, if the physical is mucked up, then then the rest is not going to respond to anything that you give it.
yep,
So, like you're just saying, sunlight, grounding, good sleep, good food,
yep,
basics, that has to be there.
yep.
Otherwise, just forget about it.
Yeah, and when those things become automatic, the world that is revealed after that is incredible. Like, the possibilities become endless, from the amount of the speed of recovery, the amount of information that you're able to absorb. I mean, this is something that, I work with, that I'm trying to kind of articulate more nowadays with clients and everything else. It's like, imagine person A to, like, person A and B. Person A has tried to read about good movement and has studied good movement, studied every muscle in the body, understands anatomy to the absolute T. Person B has a general understanding of anatomy, and has gone, okay, let me just work through what I need to work through in order to sort out some of these injuries that I have, understand, like, where my movement, where are the restrictions, and start to feel them out, for example, right? Person B, in the long term, has had thousands of more practical hours than person A, who decided to do it a little bit later, as an example, right? But it's not just the understanding; it's also the the exponential and the things that are able to occur once you do get that awareness of your body, for example. So all of a sudden now, for example, you're going to feel, and you're going to feel when you make a particular, for example, let's use football, when you change a particular technique of how you kick, you're going to understand and you're going to feel how that change in technique is actually going to influence a shot a lot easier and a lot better, a lot more potent, because your kinesthetic awareness and the way you're able to feel tension in your body has increased. You've increased the hours of you paying attention, mindfully paying attention to how your body is able to perform in these different instances. You know what I mean? So using neurogenesis as an example for learning new techniques comes from actually being able to sit with your body, sit with that mindfulness that comes with actually paying attention to how your body's feeling, as an example, rather than just kind of like don't just like study the things that Taylor's saying, for example, that you're saying. You actually have to like feel them to understand how other things are impacting the positive changes you've made doing these things. Once you get sunrise every morning, and then you go and you wake up late one day, after a big night out, for example, you're gonna understand the consequences of the next day a lot more than if you were to just be going out all the time and waking up at the same time super late. You're not going to feel that. So if you listen to those consequences, right, you'll understand straight away how optimal your body was functioning and how much you want to stay there. That's the cascading effect, the domino effect of a lot of these positive changes.
Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you how can you describe the taste of a magnificent grass-fed, grass-finished ribeye to a person that's only ever ate hot dogs?
Yep. Yep.
It doesn't have the foil
Yep.
to test the contrast.
Yep.
And that same thing is there, that same kind of concept we can talk about in biomechanics and movement,
Yep.
how they feel the skill of playing football.
Yep.
And going off that, I want to touch base on more of your background, because
Yep.
on your story, we kind of finished off. You had the big injury. You
Yep.
took about 2 years to recover, rehab, and get back to a place where you felt okay,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then then from there you went to London.
Yep. Yeah, so I went to
And then
London, and then I
carry on
went
from there.
to so then I went to an academy in Liverpool where I was playing. Kind of think of it as like an academy where a lot of semi-professional and professional players would, just kind of free agents train while you were playing against professional clubs, for example, just to keep fitness. See if you can set up a few trials, see if you can, get into the network. And during that time, I played against a lot of professional clubs, Blackpool, played against Wrexham, trained with Wrexham for a little bit, playing with different, under 18s, under 21, League Two, League Conference League, League One teams, a few championship teams. And while you're there, you're obviously, you're playing, games, organized games against these professional clubs. And this was in Liverpool. So, football, dominant kind of culture and city, that in Liverpool is pretty much football and boxing. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. And while I was there, I had another injury that at the time that came from a tackle as well. Like, it was a rupture of my peroneal tendon on the side of my shin. And during that time, I had another point of reflection. And one day I heard online about, this guy was talking about a particular way of releasing the scar tissue of the shin. And he was talking about how sometimes things in the lower limb, for example, were going to be affecting how you planted your foot. And this was the first time that I'd actually heard someone talk about how the way you ran and the way you walked actually impacted the way the rest of your body was responding to, to the different forces in movement, as an example. So once I heard that just, it kind of came in. I thought about it a little bit, but it came back out because there was no reinforcement of anyone around me who was doing this. There was no one telling me, hey, this is how it's supposed to be, or it's some guy online. I decided to go back to Spain to heal my injury, back to see my family, stay with them for a little bit. And that's when I started to go, while studying on my own, a little bit deeper into understanding exactly what that guy was talking about. Okay, so how is the way I walk and the way I run actually impacting the rest of my body? And what I
Mm-hmm.
came to learn was the way that my body had healed after the injury. When you think about kind of like a tower, right? And think about the pillar at the base of the tower, and how if one of those pillars or one of the building blocks of the base of the building is affected, how that can affect the rest of the structure, right? The way
Mm-hmm.
it ends up leaning off to the right. Think about the Leaning Tower of Pisa, for example, or everything else in between, right? The ground moves, things are going to shift in the rest of the building, right? So
Mm-hmm.
because this was a shin injury, I understood that my shin had basically healed kind of 2 centimeters out to the right, as opposed to being completely straight on. And this little shift had affected how my knee was responding to the shin, how my hip was responding to the knee, and everything else along the
Mm-hmm.
chain. So I'll be running, but rather than running in a way that I was balancing out the muscles across the whole leg, I was using a lot more of one side of the muscle. I was not using the opposite side of the muscle. I was too much in my hip flexor, not enough in my glute. There was a whole bunch of kind of cascading issues of that. So once I understand that, my mind was just blown. All of a sudden, I started to actually have confidence in that. It was clarity. Actually, what it was clarity as to, oh, this isn't just me being a bad athlete and me just being, I guess, just cursed. There was actually an understanding. Oh, okay, this is the way it is, and I can fix it. And I think once someone experiences that confidence and understanding, or that clarity, it's a very empowering feeling, because all of a sudden you realize that you're actually in charge of like how your own destiny with things. And that the same. I think we've chatted a lot about that when it comes to diet and general other things as well. It's like once you get the clarity and understanding of how your stomach is supposed to work, with certain foods, how your energy levels are supposed to work with certain foods, what happens when you eat this, or what happens when you don't do that. You're empowered to actually be able to make the changes necessary to actually become better. That's if you want to become better. Of course, that intention has to be there in the first place. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I started going deeper down the biomechanics route, and of understanding like what was going on with my leg. And unfortunately, because of the lifestyle stuff that I was talking about just then, I didn't heal as good as I could be. I was in Madrid at the time, but it was winter. There was no real sun. I was just kind of locked inside, just doing a bit of rehab exercises, and wasn't sleeping that well, and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
affected again my recovery. But then I started learning more about that. I started learning about Jack Cruz. I started learning about all these different people that were talking about the importance of sunlight, grounding, and all these other different things that I started
Mm-hmm.
to reinforce again. More clarity as to what I can do with my environment, where I was like, oh, wow, okay, now I've got even more knowledge of understanding. So then my thirst for knowledge and everything started to rapidly increase. And then I started to delve deeper into different things. But the one thing that stuck with me was the movement and biomechanics. And through understanding certain, positions of how the foot was meant to work and how the knee was meant to work, I was able to rehab myself, while I was over there with the guidance of a few people online. And I ended up playing a little stint in Toledo, which was in the third division at the time in Spain. And I was just kind of like playing with them and just kind of training with them at the time, and just getting my fitness back. As quickly I started to troubleshoot issues that started to come through. Again, those prior injuries and those prior kind of like patterns, but with the understanding now of how to actually kind of start to work around these injuries and start to activate certain things that weren't, kind of activating. And then look, this injury kind of like lasted a little bit longer than I expected. And I was like, okay, I need to
Mm-hmm.
start again. I went back to Australia, and then my thirst for kind of understanding more about biomechanics increased. And that's when I started to go full time into understanding that and working in that, and, going through that
Mm-hmm.
route. Yep.
That's amazing, man. And so from there, how did you become a coach yourself,
Yep.
helping other people, athletes, pro
Yep.
athletes improve their performance?
So so at the time, I've always really open minded, different bits of information. Both my parents are psychologists, and they kind of raised me to think more about more than just what your mind and kind of like what your mind can I guess, perceive and the deeper world behind learning and understanding things in general. It's not just, what you see is not what you get. A lot of the time, there's a lot of deeper ways
Mm-hmm.
of learning things, whether it's, visually, auditory, a lot of the ways of different learning. And what I started to understand was my ability to learn physically was a lot more developed, say for example, and visually than say written, as an example, right? And this all made sense when I started, doing a lot of these movements and looking at someone doing them and being able to replicate exactly how they were doing it and what they were meant to be feeling. I go, okay, like I've got a innate understanding of this, whether it was natural or whatever. And then I started to go down the path of understanding that more. So I went down, once I kind of researched traditional methods of rehabilitation, I went down that path of rehab. There was elements to that just did not click. Whether it was, for example, with the tendon issue that I experienced overseas. I would listen to a physio. They'd be like, "Okay, I need you to just move your foot out here and activate your foot here and turn your foot here," and then
Yeah.
and then I would be like, "Okay, my knee's hurting now. Like, what do I do with my knee?" And they're like, "Okay, you want to flex your knee here. You want to do a few like little internal rotations, and then you want to do this." And I was like, "Yeah, but then my right glute's really tight." Okay, so for the glute, we're going to turn your femur in, and then we're going to move your pelvis to the right. And then it was always about like just working on exactly what I was feeling in that moment, but not understanding how all those three injuries were connected into the same, route. So then that's when I
Mm-hmm.
discovered functional patterns. And then I discovered like Paul Chek's work and understanding, and started to change my perspective of, rather than looking at my body as a isolated, joint, I started to get a fuller picture of looking, oh, when I'm moving, all these different systems are working all at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I interpreted that as I need to understand everything of everything. So I went
Mm-hmm.
down a few years of just trying to go down every single rabbit hole that was possible within that framework of understanding. What does the nervous system do? What is the fascial network? What do muscles do? How does diet affect the fascial network? How does sun affect the fascial network? What happens when I move here? Why are breakdancers moving like that? Why are footballers moving like this?
Mm-hmm.
And then through that complexity, you actually come to understand it's a lot simpler than what you think it is, and there are other systems out there now that are doing a lot of different, biomechanics movement focus. But my my love for kind of movement and biomechanics settled on the notion, or the main kind of idea, that within each sport, within everything that there is a blueprint, there is a DNA with how humans are meant to move in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's footballers, whether it's basketballers, the same way that Messi is good in football is the same way that Michael Jordan is good at basketball, right? The expressions of that athleticism are slightly different with how with one is jumping a little bit more than another, or someone else is moving. But once you kind of come to understand that, and you're able to replicate a lot of these different positions in different people, right? You start to see a lot more uniform results, with people feeling more athletic, with people feeling
Mm-hmm.
more balanced in their body, with people feeling more capable in their body. And that's when I went down the route of biomechanics, and I started to really, go down and become as good as I can be, really, within that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my journey as well. Just long story short, going through so many injuries,
Yep.
seeing how most of the methods of rehab just focus on the symptoms and just look at the point of pain in one joint and don't
Mm.
look at how the whole system works as a whole.
Yep.
And obviously, when you understand that, then you can see why top athletes are so good and why all the like wannabe athletes that try and copy the top athletes don't get the same results, because they understand that the top athletes didn't become the best in the gym, or
Yep.
doing the things that you see them doing on social media.
Mm.
So as a result of that, my question for you is, why should footballers not believe a lot of people online that tell you that you should be in the gym getting big and strong,
Yep.
tell you that you should be doing deadlifts,
Yep.
barbell work,
Yep.
and frankly, half the stuff that we see pro footballers doing is kind of like quasi bodybuilding.
Yep. Pretty
And
much, hey.
yeah.
Pretty much. That you only have so much time to train, especially
Mm,
if you're, young and you're going to school and you're already playing for your football. You only have so much time to train, and most importantly, you only have so much time to recover, right? You doing bodybuilding, let's just say without even critiquing the movements themselves, right?
mm,
If your priority is to get fast, you should be doing movements and you should be prioritizing positions that you're going to be in where speed is required, as an example, right? Okay, that
mm,
sounds logical. And you go, yeah, of course I do that already. Like I'm running and sprinting and stuff. Okay, if you're sprinting as fast as you can and you're getting faster, sprinting as fast as you can, do you think it makes sense to go to the gym and absolutely trash your legs and your quads and your joints so that the next day you were sore, and that the next day after that you're sore, and then the third day after that you're sore? So all of a sudden now you're, instead of you prioritizing your movement and sprinting and playing football, all of a sudden now you're decreasing the amount of time you're playing football, sprinting, just so that you can have more muscle in your legs that isn't necessarily conducive to speed, as an example.
mhm,
So I just think about it more like as a timetable. Like if I've got so many hours to train and I need to get better at football because I'm not good enough yet, I'm going to be prioritizing getting better at football because I'm not good enough yet, as opposed to, I reckon, just getting bigger muscle. Yeah, because Messi's quads are huge. Yeah, just get big quads, right? Rather than actually going, how does he use that quad? Do you think that, how does that, do you reckon that makes more sense if I just actually become better at being able to take on opponents and stay low in those positions and understand, I don't expect people to
mhm.
understand biomechanics because they're just fresh, but being real with where you need to be as an athlete, that's super important, super important. If you're not good enough yet, you need to just become way better at that sport. You shouldn't be looking at getting muscle if you're not playing pro yet necessarily. The muscle will come if you're following your diet protocols and your lifestyle protocols, for
Mhm.
example. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that brings us to one of the, again, another very common question from especially from younger footballers. They ask me, "How can I gain size?"
Yeah,
Because it's always because of course, before I answer,
yeah,
I always ask them, "Okay, why?"
yeah.
And they say because their coach told them that I'm not big enough, or I'm not
Right,
strong enough,
right.
or I got bodied in the game.
Yeah,
You got bodied because you're not athletic enough,
right,
and the coach says you're not big enough because you're not good enough.
right.
Because there's players that are your size, I guarantee it, playing at a higher level than you right
Yep,
now.
yep,
You know what I mean? There's
yep.
guys that are basically like the size of kids
Right.
playing at the highest level and excelling against older veterans
Yep,
that have had 10 plus years doing the gym work that your coach is telling you to do.
yep.
So
Yeah,
doesn't
pretty
make any
much.
sense, you know?
Man, you brought me back a memory of me 14 years old, right? Playing at a
Mhm.
good level, at a really good level in Australia. And I remember specifically this club was full of Scottish coaches. There was just Scottish
Mm.
coaches, right? And I remember specifically my team and the team above ours being predominantly physically like strong kids. And in general, Australian football is dominated by athleticism a lot of the time, and not
Mhm.
necessarily focus on holding the ball, being able to protect the ball, all these things. It's more about how quick you can sprint, how good you can shoulder charge. So there is that emphasis on physicality. And I remember
Mhm.
him one day specifically saying those words of, "You need to get like bigger. I want you to eat more. I want you to do all these things." There was another kid on my team smaller than me, right? And he never said those things to him, right? And I didn't know at the time. I didn't think about this at the time. If I look at it
Mhm.
back now, the only difference between me and him was he knew how to run properly. I didn't know how to run properly, right? My
Mhm.
body in the way that I was running, I just didn't know how to run properly. I wasn't emphasizing actually playing enough football. I was just kind of I was good at football because I had been over the years. Again, experience trumps everything, right? You actually just get good at playing and
Mhm.
positions and vision and things like this. But this kid would be one step ahead of every defender trying to tackle him, right? And that was
Mhm.
it. That was the main reason. He didn't need to use physicality when he could just get in front of the defender with just a little bit more intelligence, right? Getting in front of the
Yeah.
defender just that 1 second earlier. What's a shoulder to shoulder if by the time you get to the ball, the defender's like behind you, as an example? Yeah, little things like that.
Yeah, just being smarter, being quicker,
Yep,
understanding how to use your body
yep,
so in a way that you can poke the ball out before the guy gets you.
yep,
And frankly, if you talk to any really 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 good athletes that play football at a high level,
yep,
you like those guys just won't let you touch them
yep.
because they're just you can't get near them. You know what I mean?
For sure. I love using the example of Riquelme. He's like a great
Mm.
example. Like if anyone doesn't know who that is, you got to go on YouTube right now and just type in Riquelme, Riqueme, and look at videos of him protecting the ball. Just do that for an hour, right? Just study him on holding the ball.
Yeah.
Number one, he's probably got the smallest calves in the entire Argentina team. He's got the smallest legs, quads. He had a pretty decent sized rib cage, and like a pretty big. And never really got into a full sprint when he was running because he was always playing in the middle, and it was just about protecting the ball. But he was bodying people who were twice the size of him just by understanding where strength comes from in the body, right? And how do you do that?
Mhm.
By actually protecting the ball and testing different things, as an example, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to position if you're going to go shoulder to shoulder with someone who's a lot bigger than you, of course you're going to fall. But if you know how to use your hips properly, you're not going to fall. You're going to be grounded you're
Mm.
going to be grounded. You're going to be able to twist and turn and position your body in ways that are going to be,
Mhm.
conducive to you being able to stay balanced. As an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's a lot to
Well,
that.
Sebastian, we are almost at the hour. I've had a lot of fun talking to you so far. I have like at least 10 more questions on my notes,
Yep,
and I'm sure we'll do a part two to get through more of this and learn more about your
for
journey
sure.
and understand more about fascia, muscle, biointegrity, and everything
Mm,
that has to do with the nervous system
yep,
and how all that can translate into footballers becoming better and having more fun on the pitch, frankly.
yep.
And long story short, guys, it's not bad to be big and strong,
No,
quote unquote.
absolutely not.
And like you don't have to be small to be athletic, like
Yep,
or like you don't have to be skinny to be good at soccer or
yep.
football. But the key is just understand what is the most important thing for you to be good at your sport
That's it.
and prioritize that.
Yep,
And if you're undersized, if you're underweight, there's probably an underlying factor why you're not developing like your structure, your muscle naturally,
yep,
as opposed to basically creating like swelling in the muscle in the gym.
yep, yep. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
it. I
So
think there is.
yeah.
Yeah, once you understand exactly how to load the body, I guess functionally as well. Like there is ways to obviously gain mass without
Mhm.
sacrificing that, but it's not necessarily associated with the gym. There's many things that you can do
Yeah,
on
of
the
course.
football pitch that you can increase in size. For example, that whether it's certain ways of playing in general. But we'll talk about that next time. But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. Good to chat to you.
Yeah, Sebastian. And if guys can't wait until the next episode, where can they find you in the meantime?
Instagram, so Seb_Coello, Coell, Seb Coello on Twitter, and those are probably the best ways to find me.
All right, awesome.
Yep,
So again, Sebastian, thank you so much. I think you're one of the best uh, coaches in the world at the moment. I think there's lots of people that
appreciate it, man.
are kind of just talking the talk but can't really walk the walk. And you and I both are kind of on a journey to wake up some people and to cause some revolution
Some ripples,
in
huh?
the world of sport. All
That's
right.
it.
So
That's it.
thank you again, man, and I'll see you very soon for round two. Okay.
Awesome, bro. Keen for the takeover. I'll